Psalm 13. How long, O God, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O God, my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because God has dealt bountifully with me.
How many moons in our solar system? With 8 or so planets, how many moons total? My guess when challenged was 22. I figured the Earth had one and rounded up, etc. It turns out it's more than 200. Saturn alone has more than 80 moons. That's a common mistake. We make it all the time. We assume that our neighborhood is like every neighborhood, that our situation and experience is universal. But that is rarely true. These are the words of Seth Godin. I will bring them back a little later. Friends, I've got to be honest with you. I have never liked the 4th of July. For starters, I don't like loud noise, and I can't stand firecrackers. As a kid, it just never made any sense to me that pyrotechnics were illegal, but you could buy them at any roadside stand for weeks leading up to the event. A firecracker once exploded in my cousin's eye. My brother's hand was badly burned another year, and when my favorite cat disappeared one 4th of July weekend, it was rumored that our neighbors, the Santa Cruz boys, had frightened the cat to death with firecrackers. I didn't doubt it for 1 second. No, I just don't get the allure. As a child, the history of the celebration was lost on me because no one ever really made mention of it. Or if they did, I wasn't paying attention. In elementary school, I learned that the 4th of July celebrated the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which was written by Thomas Jefferson and signed on July 4th in 1776. That was the year that the Continental Congress declared that 13 American colonies were no longer subject to the rule of Britain's monarchy. Woohoo! But I dutifully said the Pledge of Allegiance and, like many of you, I suspect, waved the tiny little American flags. This is where Seth Godin's words ring particularly true. We assume that our neighborhood is like every neighborhood, that our situation and experience is universal. I never questioned anyone's excitement about the 4th of July. I just thought how it looked on my block was how it looked everywhere, all hamburgers and water gun fights. Here are the things I was never taught. The 4th of July celebrations add acid to injury for the native populations displaced from their lands between 1625 and the late 1700s. I was never taught that those same native peoples were enslaved by a system that was legal in all 13 colonies prior to the American Revolutionary War. I was also not taught, nor do I imagine most of us were, that Thomas Jefferson held slaves, with whom he fostered children, whom he also kept as slaves. I was not taught that enslaved people, both native and those stolen and imported from Africa, built this fine country of ours. And until recently, I had not read the great orator Frederick Douglass's speech from July 5th, 1852, wherein he told his all-white audience that the 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I mourn. Here's an excerpt from that speech. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, it is a day that reveals to him more than any of all others the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sound of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants brass-fronted impudence, your shout of liberty and equity hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns and sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him more bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. No, that is not what I was taught. Were you? Every summer, my family spent many a happy camping trip in our orange Volkswagen van, exploring the great national parks across this country. One of our favorite stops was Mount Rushmore, which I have visited more than once, even one year on the 4th of July. That was loud. Perhaps you learned, but I did not, that Mount Rushmore, which features the heads of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, also known as the Shrine of Democracy, is seen by the Lakota Sioux Indian tribe as a desecration of their sacred mountain and a breach breach of contract. Did you know that the Black Hills was part of the Fort Laramie Treaty, which was assigned the mountain range along with a larger area to the native tribes of that land? But in 1877, the United States broke that treaty because they found gold in the Black Hills. I didn't. I understand now only because of further research that the Lakota peoples were offered financial compensation in 1980, but they refused because the only thing they wanted back was their land. Can you see how easy it is to believe that what is normal to us is normal to everyone? The key to moving forward as faithful, hopeful people is to understand that our past need not define us, but it must, my friends, inform us. If we are to be able to build a more united nation that is indeed for all people, indivisible under God. Today's sacred text is from the psalmist who cries out to God in pain, "How long, O God, how long?" I know many of you are feeling that way today because this pandemic has stretched into the 4th month, a pandemic called COVID-19. You've missed graduations and birthday parties and visits to your grandchildren, anniversaries, family reunions, even memorials. Fortunately, our congregation has not yet lost a single life to COVID-19, and that is due in large part to your diligence in staying home, wearing masks, exercising physical distancing, and remembering that in keeping safe, you are loving one another well. This is another one of those moments when it's important to remember that our situation, our experience is not universal. We must understand that Black and brown and poor bodies are being disproportionately affected by this pandemic. Every time the majority insists that things go back to normal, we are also insisting that low-income earners go back to work in dangerous conditions. In this country, it has been and is still a requirement that people of color and the poor put their lives on the line in service to the predominantly white nation's expectations. We can do better than that. In this era of access to all kinds of instant information, it is not enough to say, "I never knew." Because if we want to know, we can know. As faithful people, we must come to terms with the fact that any nation that ignores more than half of its population is deep in the throes of more than a national health pandemic. It is deep in the throes of a moral and, yes, spiritual crisis. Our current political climate speaks volumes about our country's interpretation of freedom. Beloved, there is little to celebrate in this nation until the damage done to indigenous and previously enslaved people of this land is acknowledged and healed. There is little to celebrate in the wealthiest nation on earth until all people of every race and nationality are adequately housed, educated, and supported in an equitable manner. While we are stuck at home, there is much to consider, friends. May this be the 4th of July that we commit to understanding that everyone's experience is not the same. May this be the 4th of July that we are able to say once and forevermore, everyone is deserving of our nation's abundance. Whether or not that becomes a politically popular version of justice, that is God's justice. Good people of faith hold out for a justice that is worthy of the kingdom of God. Then and only then will this day be a cause for celebration in the strong name of Jesus.